Hello, welcome to Scary Thoughts, Horror, Philosophy, Culture. I'm Marc Cade.
And I'm Chad Lott.
This is episode 108. We're going to be talking about Halloween Ends, the David Gordon Green film from 2022. You can email us at whattthe, at scarythoughts.org. And do you have anything to plug?
Nothing to plug, but a congratulations to the Lord Battle and Huntress, a.k.a. Oksana and Russell, for having their baby by now. I think the Overlook Theater folks, they were pretty quiet about it, and I was talking to them the other day. So congrats on
That's
having
amazing.
a baby.
Congratulations, guys.
Hopefully they choose the sword over the ball, and you will not have to put them out into the streets.
What?
You know, like in the old samurai movies, like, choose the ball and join your mother in death. Choose the sword and join me in battle.
Nope.
Like, it's like and they put a sword and a ball in front of a baby, and you have to choose and decide if your baby's going to be a bitch or not at the beginning, you know? I think it's a traditional.
That does not seem efficacious to me.
I mean, like, what? I mean, you got to have some sort of tradition. Anyway, congrats, and hopefully your child becomes a warrior able to withstand the harshness of the wasteland.
Okay, spoilers ahead for Halloween Ends.
You seem a bit under the weather, Mark. You seem a little slow today.
I am so slow. 2 days ago, I got my flu shot. Last night, I went out drinking for free for many, many hours. And then today, I got my COVID booster. So I'm like 3 layers of nauseous. And this is going to be the best episode ever.
Damn, you're just all full of myocarditis.
I don't know whatever. What that is.
It's like what the Fauci injection gives you.
Love that guy.
I guess. I don't know.
Where do we want to start?
Well, we're covering the third of the Blumhouse Halloween.
Third and final.
The third and final.
But not the final of perhaps this arc, but the third and final Blumhouse.
Yeah, I think it might also be the final of this arc. Because the rights go back to the producer that had owned it for quite some time. And hopefully he will continue to make his money off of it. Because that is pretty much the only thing that this franchise is worth. Is just, it's like milking it like a rancid cow, just sad out in the field by itself. I mean, this movie is not as bad as the previous one.
True.
But it is a piece of shit.
Oh, I totally disagree. I was actually shocked how much I liked it. I was really expecting another Halloween Kills, which was incredibly disappointing, but I really appreciated the twists and turns. Not that they were malignant level twists and turns, but I did like that it undermined a lot of expectations. And it's hard for me not to add that it gave me delight that it made so many fanboys mad, you know?
Yeah, I guess. I'm actually, am on record as a hater of the Halloween franchise. Yeah. So I wouldn't say I was a mad fanboy. As somebody who does value my time, though, I was pretty mad at the time that I spent on it. So I guess we could talk about the big problem is it's just a fucking mess, man. It doesn't make any sense. This is the baseline level of horror critique is like, why is this person who spent her whole life going Terminator 2 suddenly like baking cookies in this fucking house? How could she even possibly make that transition?
Well, further, when he's in prison and we know where he is, and he has proven to be, at least in this timeline, a threat to nobody, probably hasn't killed anybody in 50 years or whatever, 40 years. She's in a bunker with just like PTSD incurably.
Yeah.
And then as soon as he's literally out in the world, having recently murdered a lot of people and is somewhere local, she's baking cookies in a house with lots of windows and easy to break down doors. And seems to have her guard down and is fairly well adjusted.
Yeah, and she could really have like accomplished most of her goals with like some Google alerts and a 50 cal. Like, oh, he's getting out on Wednesday. Don't say.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah. I also liked.
Well, he's not getting out. He escaped from a bus that was transporting him.
He did, but that's worth knowing about, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if I had a Michael Meyers in my life, I would want to know if he was transferring prisons, if he was literally just like outside the barbed wire,
Yeah.
But I liked the survivalist Ripley from Aliens version of Laurie Strode far more than this one.
I like that version of anybody better.
Except I also appreciated it was inconsistent and it's messy and it's kind of plot hole adjacent, but how so many people are in the town are like, it's your fault.
Well,
they're pretty right. Not because she provoked him or something, which is poppycock, but that she like was completely ineffective at the thing that she spent her life trying to accomplish.
What's the name of this dumb town?
Haddonfield.
Haddonfield. Like
is that right?
Yeah, on the sign outside
I was going to say
Haddonfield.
Plainfield, but that's where another
its
bunch
motto
of murders
should just be like, hurt people, hurt people. Like
yes.
that's the motto of this town. The whole town is made up of these like shitty survivors who seem like it's like almost if you took the crowd at the public forums in Parks and Rec and then like gave them a boogeyman. That's like what this whole town is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like the overbearing, heavy-handed messaging about mob mentality from the previous film.
Yeah.
But I do kind of like, especially in the like introduction, there's this sort of moral, it's akin to a moral panic. It's not a moral panic. It's a panic where somehow this, and I'm giving it a read that it doesn't earn, but Michael Myers is so evil that people are still killing themselves and each other in the wake of his murder sprees. And so, there are all these documented deaths in the town because it's so dark, but that's also just confirmation bias. People live there, people die, people commit suicide. It happens.
Yeah.
A serial killer doesn't inspire a town to go down the drain, although he did kill an awful lot of people recently.
I mean, a lot of people. Like if you killed that many people in one area, like in real life, I mean, this is a film, obviously, so horror is always fantasy adjacent, so
yes.
it can be loosey-goosey or whatever, but
sure.
You can't imagine that this place wouldn't be, like, you could just imagine like murder podcasters descending on this town, kind of like isn't that one of the Halloweens has the murder podcasters? Yeah, like the first one, right, of this series.
Right, but
like, why aren't there more of that now?
That's exactly that. I totally have notes about this. Like, if it was just the first Halloween, it would be like one episode of My Favorite Murder.
Yeah.
But now that he's killed every adult over 170 pounds in this town, like there should be gift shops selling Michael Myers merch. There would be squads of people scouring. He couldn't live in a sewer under a well-traveled bridge.
No.
Like everybody'd be looking for him everywhere. There would be podcasters going through the sewers trying to find him.
Yeah, it would be like Roswell, like
yes,
like one alien jerked off there in the 50s, and now like every store has to have a UFO in the window.
Exactly.
But that's not really. I mean, that's not a problem. Like, that's just our like fan fiction opinings.
True.
So to get to like what
it doesn't need to be in this film.
No, and like. Again, films don't need to be anything, but I thought like I guess I watched this movie twice. Like we were talking earlier, I think I've seen it. I saw it once incredibly stoned, and then you were like, "What'd you think of it?" I was like, "Ugh," and then I watched it again after you're like, "It was great." I was like, maybe I was just like I missed some of it or something, and sure enough, I did. And when I watched it like a little more straightforward the second time, they're wrapping up the Mike Myers, Jamie Lee Curtis story. It's a bit weird to introduce this Charlie Brown character in, that gets like taken over. And that seems like very 80s slasher to me. Like it's actually kind of more of it almost in line with like even the first and second Halloweens where you're like, wait, who is Michael Myers? Who's the killer? Those sort of questions. And there's like kind of a Freddy 2 sort of thing where it's like the evil spirit has migrated into this loser. Also has like kind of a Christine vibe.
Yep.
But it's weird to like wrap it up, to like introduce that whole thing. And like, it feels like this should have been like the second one or so. I don't know. Maybe.
I was totally on board.
Yeah.
I liked that there was sort of an apprenticeship happening, but it came to naught. It just couldn't get transferred over into we're so used to opportunities for sequels, and this was a perfect opportunity for sequel. Like he inspired this kid to become a better murderer, but the kid's dead. You know, it did not get passed. The torch did not get passed on.
Yeah. But what I was thinking about the potential for a pass on is, you know, basically like Michael Myers is this pure evil that has no real source. Like other than Rob Zombie's Halloween films, like there seems to be sort of an effort to keep what happened to make him that in the dark a little bit.
Totally.
You know, because it's like he is actually pure evil, which we know he's not pure evil because as per our previous episode, he doesn't kill the baby in the bassinet. So he has some sort of like code, you know, like some sort of like cuckishness has sneaked into his outlook on life.
Not killing
like
babies, just cuckish.
Well, if you're a fucking a murdering killing machine that is unstoppable pure evil that can't be understood by anyone, including your psychologist, like then yeah, it's kind of a pussy move not to kill the baby.
Wow.
I mean, like some people are into killing babies. I think we made this joke on the last podcast.
Yeah,
last
sorry,
time
everybody.
we talked about this.
Call back.
Yeah. Anyway, like if he's super pure evil, the kid, Corey, you see the things that put him on the path.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like there's all these things that are kind of like, oh, well, this kid's definitely going to end up fucked up. Like it's pretty much like, you know, they run the school shooter, like, programming on him, you know, and he just makes it till he's like 25 or whatever. And it's like the little kid at the beginning that gets killed, I think deserves to die. But it's like he's getting like alphaed by this little kid. And then later on he's bullied by not the football team, but the band.
The band geeks.
Like, I mean, Jesus Christ, you can't have a lower totem pole character than that. And then like an old lady at the gas station shits on him, you know, it's just, it's a bad thing. So it's like, okay, well, if a sad person can become in contact with pure charismatic evil and become turned, you know, what about the rest of the town? This town is full of assholes. So I was thinking of that, you know, that Grinder funeral at the end. It's like, yeah, are you going to grind up everybody who's a dickhead in this town? Because it's probably going to be what it takes.
To do what?
To stop the whole Michael Myers thing. Because I was thinking like if his evilness has escape velocity into another person, it's like there's other terrible people in this town that his evil could escape to. So I could see sort of like a distributed cryptocurrency based evil making its way through this town.
Oh my God.
I don't know.
But speaking of killing the kid, I'm about to say something that may or may not be true. Mm-hmm. But, you know, we've always had precocious kids and brats in TV and film. Mm-hmm. But feel like there's increasingly depictions of sociopathically cruel kids that you want their characters to be murdered. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's not new, but fairly new. Like this kid is a monster and gets killed, and it's gruesome and terrible. But I feel like that kind of a kid in a movie is fairly new. Like we used to have like Children of the Damned and things like Village of the Damned, you know, like capital E evil children.
Yeah.
But they were the monsters. And now we have depictions of them just in things. And it's not just them being precocious kids. They're evil. They're depicted as evil. And I wonder if it is partly a depiction that is a backlash against like permissive parenting and things like that. Like,
yeah, who knows?
Like we're talking more about how kids get like that, and there's sort of a collective refusal to allow for it, and that's being depicted in films and television. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the first time I really experienced a lot of that, like Montessori permissive parenting shit, was it when I was working at farmers markets in Marin, and I had not seen like parents treat their children like that.
Yep.
And they were obviously horrible kids. Like they're just like no boundaries, just running around, jumping on shit. You're like, hey man, that's like our cash register. Keep your fucking grubby little hand off of it. And they're like, oh, he's learning about math at the Montessori school. No, he's just banging on our fucking cash register because you haven't trained him. And like my wife has a couple of friends who have these just like unbearable feral children that are just like, they just need a beating, I guess. Like I mean,
They need boundaries, not violence.
I mean, what's a better boundary than a well-placed slap, Mark?
I'll let our listeners decide for themselves. To actually respond to what you're saying, there's almost a feeling that the kid in this movie and other kids that I can't think of right now, but I feel like their pop culture is rife with them in the last 10 years, are like the type of children that you and I would write into a screenplay. Like, see, kids are monsters.
Yeah, I mean, they're basically just like asshole kids. But here's the thing about them. Like, they're all sort of asshole-ish in the way that, like, oh, obviously these kids are going to grow up to be Trump voters.
Yeah.
Like, they have that sort of asshole. It's definitely not oh, here's a pack of teenagers from Mission High about to go beat up some Asians in Chinatown. You know what I mean? That
true.
never gets depicted.
That's true.
In movies at all. Like, actual bad kids, like gang kids.
Yep.
You never really see that.
No, that's true.
You know, but you do get quite a bit of like the gummo kid that is bad, or, you know, like the ultra privileged sort of like, you know, jock murder kid. You get a lot of that.
Right.
Which I think has a lot to do with who was stuffing these writers in lockers 20 years ago.
Oh, always.
Yeah.
Oh, always. I mean, I think that's such a, you know, film, or let's just talk about horror movies. Horror movies are products of their time, and they're products of the type of person who grows up to make a horror movie.
Yeah. I mean, these are like, I think, I just read Tarantino's book, Cinema Speculation, which, I mean, if you're a fan of him, is 100% worth listening to or reading. And it also does a really interesting thing where it mixes just film criticism in with like biography. So you get an idea, and it's interesting because he is such an important filmmaker. So you get like what an important filmmaker's perspective about film was, and then how he formed that perspective of film. You know, it was like really basically his mom's a single mom that was dating athletes in LA in the 60s. And so, you know, whatever football player would come take him to go see a new Jim Brown movie. And that's kind of
right.
Like, so you get like a little bit of that origin story mixed in there. But he makes a point in the book about how like all the filmmakers he liked were the first real like film school filmmakers. So before that, you're basically like plumbers with cameras. You know, you're like, got to get this gangster movie out, and so then his generation of filmmaker was responding to this first auteur. You know, now you have like I think filmmakers responding to rules on Reddit threads. You know,
totally.
Yeah, like where it's like this socially mediated idea of like, oh, like we have to only think of the black character dying in the beginning in this one particular way. Final girls mean this one particular thing. And like it's fairly fundamentalist. I mean, I think even if you listen back to some of our earlier episodes, especially when we're under the sway of men and women and chainsaws, we have like kind of like a pretty standard opinion about stuff like in that field.
Yeah.
But I wonder like what will come after this.
Yeah, I think something that parallels that kind of thing that I questioned about this movie is what would it be like if there was nothing metatextual about this movie? If the make and model of the car, if the names of characters, if nothing was referring to previous iterations of Halloween, other John Carpenter films, other horror directors, etc. What if this trilogy or this movie existed completely independently from the world of metatextual cinema? And I think it's almost impossible. Like impossible because that is so outside of what's expected, and we're still, as we've complained about before, in this era where fans actually have say in content, which is grotesque.
Total mistake.
Yeah, it's a deep mistake. But it also just makes me think about this film in general, the thing we've talked about for, you know, probably every episode of Scary Thoughts, that making cinema that looks good has never been easier, and it's more common, and horror films just look better. The acting is just better. The lighting's better. The color timing's better. The soundtrack is wielded with more dexterity. And it makes these films feel like they're better than they are.
Yeah.
But this movie has as many plot holes and leaps of faith that are required, just as many as a campy 80s slasher film. But because it's self-serious and it had a real budget and probably all the actors were fed real food between takes,
Right.
it feels like it should be better than it is. And I quite liked it, so I'm not totally discounting it. But so it feels like it's of a piece with what's being called prestige auteur horror, but it really, really is not.
Yeah.
Because there's no big, amazing vision that's overseeing it. It's just another slasher movie. It's more clever than most of them, but it just happens to look better than the ones from the 80s.
It's interesting. Like I was thinking about, like when you think about modern auteur horror, I don't think what we have is real auteur filmmaking. And like even in the A24, like maybe the dude that did The Witch, because it's so singular or whatever, like maybe gets to be an auteur, called an auteur. But
I feel like Jordan Peele gets a lot of control.
Yeah. I mean, but I think you can't just be in control to be an auteur. I think there has to be like another element in place. It can't just be like this was so controlled by one person. And I think it has to actually be good and pushes different boundaries. And I think when like you lean so heavily on metatextual elements that aren't doing anything other than saying, look at this, remember it. Like it's a difference. The reason why I think Jordan Peele is not as good of a filmmaker as Quentin Tarantino is there's just a Chud VHS on the wall. Like it's not like he's saying anything about it other than remember this and think about this film in the context of those films, which is a thing to say, but it's not the same as like, I think like in Kill Bill, the Bruce Lee jumpsuit that she's in, the main character Beatrix is doing the Japanese restaurant fight scene in.
Yeah.
It's for sure a, hey, do you remember that? But it's completely reinterpreted and reowned by that new character. Like, cause it's so, I think that fight sequence is more impressive than the original Bruce Lee movie that it came from. So to me, he's responded to the anxiety of the influence, like to kind of and use the Harold Bloom sort of thing. Like he's like, yeah, the influence is there. Whereas if he was just like, I'm wearing the Bruce Lee jumpsuit, ta-da, and like it would be less cool. And I think that what A24 has more than like real auteurs, like whatever Canon Films had. Like there's a system that's making this stuff. It's like making products. So like in the way that like Dr. Squatch soaps all kind of smell the same because they come from the same smoke soap make. Even if they're different flavors, they have the same.
Dr. Squatch?
It's just it's an online soap company.
Okay.
You know, it'd be like Casper Mattress or something like that.
Okay.
It's like a generic sort of thing. You wonder like what are these films saying other than look, we've made clever horror movies.
Yeah.
You know, especially these Halloween movies. I think they're just not. They don't say anything.
I think it says a little. Again, I dig Corey's struggle. I appreciate the way that we're set up for another Michael Meyers showdown. Mm-hmm. And what we get is watching this kid get funneled into becoming a follow-up to Michael Myers. I think it's actually an interesting gesture and an interesting way to structure a character's development.
Yeah.
It's not amazing, but I think two things. One, I was totally on board. I just was. Mm. And also, I guess I'm getting really grateful to any movie that doesn't follow the Save the Cat rules perfectly. And so now that, in a very short time, I've seen Malignant, Barbarian, and then this, just to watch these, in the scheme of things, fairly low budget movies do things with narrative that most populist movies are just not rolling dice on.
Yeah. My question though is like, is it doing it because it's aware of the format and is trying to like step around the format for the sake of stepping around the format? or is it doing it because it's interested in playing that game itself? Who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah.
But I guess just anybody who wants to undermine the Hollywood formula, Godspeed them.
Yeah, but I don't think there's any undermining the Hollywood formula. I mean, like that was another thing.
They're still just narrative films with a climax.
Yeah, I mean,
sure.
that's the other thing I came away from cinema speculation from, was just like these film in particular is such a like group effort, and there's all kinds of shit happening that you or I will never know about, and probably people won't know about until like some other filmmaker like Eli Roth interviews them for some show later on, you know?
Yeah.
Like somebody slept with somebody's wife, therefore a scene gets cut, or an actor doesn't get chosen, and like the second actress doesn't have the chops for an extended scene, like or whatever, or like Michael Meyers breaks his foot. Like there's so many things that can happen to
Bela Lugosi's too drunk or high, so they have to get his chiropractor to stand in. That shit's beautiful.
Yeah, he died.
Oh, he died.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
Okay, yeah. But there's all kinds of shit like that, you know?
Oh, for sure.
Fucking Alec Baldwin shoots you in the face. Like,
yeah.
You know?
Okay. What do you think of? I think this is a very generic, straight out of off the box, a very generic way of thinking about any sort of speculative fiction. What do you think of the death threshold of Michael Myers and the way it is danced around through these films?
You mean like how much it takes to take him out from film to film?
Yes. Like he seems to be immortal, but not quite. But he got really weak because he was living in the sewers, and then he kills one person and he's got that fire back. And then it takes going through an industrial shredder to make sure the job is done. But
the whole series is clearly not trying to establish like rules, you know, so there's no rules to follow. But I think that also makes it like hard to know like what the stakes are at, you know, for characters. It makes it hard to know like, oh, should this person be super scared right now? Or is there any hope at all? Or is there a supernatural element at play that is somewhat more interesting to explore? I think it's one of the things that I've always been dissatisfied with this whole franchise is it's not so wild that it's like magical anything goes weirdness.
Like Friday the 13th.
Yeah, like Friday the 13th. Like I find like the gonzo-ness of Friday the 13th to kind of be more appealing than the in-betweenness of, I guess Michael Myers has always been kind of like an in-betweener to me. Like, you know, like I like, oh, is there the devil and there's like rules to engaging the devil in this world? Like,
right.
because part of what I like about films is falling into a world. Like I like to go be completely immersed in the vision of this place that the filmmakers have created. And if something is like both gritty and real and brutal and doesn't have any coherence, it's like the grittiness sort of, it's again, that whole like realism is bad for superheroes. I think it works the same for like a supervillain, which is like a Michael Myers type character.
Yeah.
You know, I would like to see Adam West's Michael Myers more than I would like to see this.
Oh, yeah. That'd be great. I think the reason why this especially comes up for me is that, I know that pointing out that a serial killer from a slasher movie, that there are inconsistencies in how strong or like, watching a Friday the 13th movie criticizing like, how did he get to that door so fast? That's impossible, is pointless.
Yeah.
And I think that extends even to this movie, of course. But in this trilogy, he's not just this walking murder machine that maybe gets stuck with a knife in the arm once and keeps going because he's so single-minded and tough or something. He gets the shit beat out of him from a whole town. Like you actually watch up close incredible violence happen to his body.
Yeah.
And that's kind of different than watching some supernatural gonzo thing, as you framed it. So it kind of I think this trilogy really begs the question about his threshold for death, because it spends so much time examining violence against him.
Yeah.
And that is, it's not just like someone fighting back and he's really strong and almost impervious. He has survived multiple full-on assaults that seem to affect him zero.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, even how he takes damage is like related to that is like, how tough is he? Like, in some parts of the movie, he's like picking people up and like throwing them through walls
Yes.
and like tearing them to pieces and shit, like he's King Shark. And in this one, the dude who just got his ass beat by a clarinet player like takes him out and pulls his mask off. Like that sort of thing. It's like, look, there could be cartoon logic all over this thing. Like I fucking love Gremlins 2 more than anything, you know, and that's goofy as shit. And there's like, oh, you're going to, okay, this gremlin is now able to fly and then get some concrete on it and it dries really quick.
Oh, it's a gargoyle.
And, now it's like, I mean, what? You know? Like, and then when it flies through the window, it makes a perfect Batman symbol. Okay. But to me, that is art. There's like an art to that. Like there's like, I mean, that's basically surrealism, you know?
Yeah.
So this, it's like, it almost reminds, I mean, God, this is like being really generous. It's like almost like, you know, like Goya paintings depict like brutality and it's mostly pretty like realistic, but the hands will be really big.
Right.
Like I feel like the strength of Michael Meyers or Jason Voorhees is sort of like this big hands in a painting like that.
I like this. This is good.
But you'd also have to be like in the business of making excuses for this bullshit. And to me, like the entire like project of being like, well, it actually could be, it's like being in an abusive relationship with a genre. Like to constantly be making, well, he's not that bad. And I was like, man, I fuck these movies. Like, that's not my job.
Okay. So speaking of that, of just what you're saying, there are some cliches in this movie that drive me a little fucking nuts. Well, some that there are many, and there are some that I am so sick of. One, I actually have okay, this is a legitimate question, and you are into death and violence, so maybe you know. How hard do you have to stomp on a human head to collapse it? Because if you watch TV and movies, it doesn't take much.
The exact pounds for pressure, I don't know, but it's certainly not like one and done, you know?
Right.
I know you can die from a slight grazing to the head. Like that.
Oh, no. I don't mean how much of a head injury can cause death. I know it can actually be not that much. It's kind of, there's a little bit of bad luck involved. I mean how often I've seen someone wearing a boot stomp on a head and it collapses like a cantaloupe. It was in this movie and it's just a little baffling. It's just far too common. Are you looking this up?
Yeah, I'm looking this up. I gotta know. I have to know. I feel like it's worth. Okay, so thanks to Game of Thrones and some scene with the mountain.
Yep.
This Reddit answer is basically, in reality, it couldn't be done not by the strongest human in the world. The human skull is tough and stronger than concrete in some sections, but it does have its weak points. So you could probably crack it, but you would not likely be able to destroy it. It would take a minimum of 250 kilograms of force to crush a skull.
Okay, stupid question. If you were stomping, how much pounds per square inch can you exert?
I think it depends on your weight.
But how much does it depend on your weight because you're using velocity? I don't know.
Even then, it would be like the weight of your like a boot versus a shoe on the same person. There would just be more weight coming down with that velocity.
Right, but still, I mean, you could be 110 pounds and still fucking punch with more force than someone twice your weight. Could.
Yeah, it would still just be like a force delivery, you know, you know. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. So anyway, that's a cliche I'm tired of.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like people are really I feel like I've seen it a lot lately. I've seen skulls get smashed up.
Yeah. I think it might have been The Walking Dead that made it a thing. Is zombies are often knocked down and stomped on. It's very dumb.
That scene in Drive.
Oh, I don't remember that. Does that have one too?
Yeah, where Ryan Gosling's making out with the girl and then he
Yeah.
stomps the guy that's trying to kill him's head into the ground. But I don't think they never really show the guy's. I guess they do show his face. It's not, but it's not exploded like a watermelon. It looks like more what you would imagine it to look like.
Right. Another violence cliche that I'm pretty done with that this movie includes, which is two people up close are struggling. One of them has a weapon. Mm-hmm. And, okay, this version is not in this movie, but like one has a gun and they're struggling and they're up close and the camera is up high, so you just see their faces and you hear the gun go off and they both look surprised.
Yeah.
And then it takes a beat or two for you to learn who got shot. Mm-hmm. And this movie does it the same way when Corey is struggling with the homeless man with the knife. The homeless man uses his own knife against him, and they're like,
yeah.
And then there's a beat, and then it turns out he killed the homeless man on an accident. And like, it's such a played out moment. It is almost always the other person. You know what I mean? I don't think I've ever seen that done where it's a surprise who it was. Like, it wasn't going to be Corey, for example, in that instance, right? He wasn't going to get stabbed by the homeless man.
You still have an hour of that movie to go.
Right. So why try to trick us by keeping the camera away from this struggle where you know someone got stabbed but don't know who?
Yeah.
It's very tiresome.
If I was trying to imagine...
I think that was in season 2 of The Walking Dead, where, what was the patriarch's name in the first 5? The sheriff, former sheriff?
Yeah.
And his brother, don't they struggle over a gun and it goes off?
Yeah.
We don't know who it shot.
It's like, who was that actor? John Bernthal?
The one who's in The Bear?
I don't know who the Bear is.
The guy with the bigger jaw. And the
Punisher.
The Punisher. He's great.
Yeah.
I do like him.
His podcast is not terrible.
He has a podcast.
So it's called like, I don't know, like Tough Bros That Act... and that I talked to, or it's like he basically like it's either he's like talking to somebody who's like a construction worker or another actor. But what I like about him is he went to like a really like out there like Russian acting school. Where
I thought you were going to say like fighting academy, which respect.
Well, no, he was a pretty good boxer.
I just mean if you're like, I'm going to learn how to murder, I'm going to Russia.
No, but there's like a type of like that acting school. It's not Stanislavski, but it's like that. But like the school he describes, it's pretty much like, are you learning witchcraft and manipulation, or you weren't learning acting? You know, like the way he makes it out.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, that stuff's pretty cool. Like he talks when even if it's an actor that you don't think you're going to like his conversation with Shia LaBeouf is really interesting because they sort of have the same sort of like, they're really trying to do the real art. You know, whether they succeed or whatever, that's the story they're telling themselves, you know. They both have clearly fucked themselves up enough to be interesting in some way, you know, and
true.
But their conversation was, I like hearing about like techniques associated with film, even with the acting side of it. Cause it's like, there's an exercise that he talked about with Shia LaBeouf where it was about staying present in the moment. And basically you had to do your monologue and people in the audience listening to your monologue could shout shit out. Like fork, candy cane, apple, and you, while you were doing your monologue, had to remember who said what in what order. And so it was like to develop some sort of listening skill. I think that's pretty interesting for like an actor.
It's interesting, but while we're talking about film, and that just reminds me of like Whiplash. Mm-hmm. It's just like, it doesn't make you a better artist to be berated and to be triggered and to be mentally abused.
Well, I don't think that's necessarily abused.
No, I know. I'm just saying. You know? I'm just saying, like.
But I also disagree.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that if you were like mentored by a cruel person in a harsh manner, it's probably going to be pretty effective as long as the person mentoring you actually has a legit skill to bequeath. Like, I think if you're being just abused by some retard, then evaluate yourself first of all. But second of all, like, you know, have you learned anything here? You know,
I don't think instilling someone with a negative self-image yields positive results.
I think it would be the job of the person who was cruel to identify people who would or would not respond to that. So like in the film Whiplash, I think he correctly identifies that this kid, if pushed, can become great. And that's why he does it. Because you see, he doesn't really like lay it on as thick with other people, like who are like maybe, like you're the third chair saxophone player. You're not like that important. So I'm not going to like fucking crush your soul. But you right. who have the potential to reach another level, I don't think it's right for everybody, but I think in some cases it can work. And when it does work, it's awesome.
Okay. I think the last cliche in this movie that drove me kind of crazy was it's framed by this voiceover. It's framed by Laurie Strode is writing a memoir.
Oh, the Sex and the City overwrite?
Yeah. But I think especially why it doesn't work for me in this movie is she's not a good writer. It's not just her voiceover. It's supposed to be her writing.
I mean, it really is like Carrie Bradshaw making some commentary about something. Like, I mean, it's pretty great of how terrible it is. And yeah,
she needs a good editor, but I guess we're just getting her rough draft.
Yeah, it's a rough draft. Yeah. No, I mean, you just got to get this down. To me though, it's just like the almost bubbly tone of it.
It is very light.
Yeah, it's pretty light for like, it's like, is she going for like a Kat Marnell thing where she's describing all this tragedy in just a bubbly, upbeat manner?
Yeah, maybe.
She's like the Martha Stewart of Final Girls.
I don't know. We talk about hypersanity a lot, but I had a hard time not thinking about the Strode by the time we get to Halloween Ends, that she's like the opposite. Like, she has developed a persona and an identity that is about confronting an inevitable onslaught of violence, but she's completely incapable of actually doing it effectively. Mm. She's not she's a bit afraid of it, but not really. She confronts it head on, but she's terrible at meting out violence. She has no justice in her. It's very odd. I mean, I guess that's partly connected to what I was saying earlier when people in the town like blame her for things. Like, yeah, she's kind of responsible. She hasn't dealt with much of this very effectively. She alienated her family. She didn't kill Michael Meyers 3 times.
Yeah. So I think
maybe 4 times.
Yeah. So I think like one of the most interesting like parts to like examine subtext is that like the town kind of blaming her or making excuses for the real problem in town. It's like, it reminds me of like people when they're like, oh, all this homelessness in San Francisco, and they don't want to talk about drug addiction and like, yes. like Ecuadorian, like fentanyl dealers and shit. Like you're like,
totally.
Like,
they want to talk about landlords.
They want to talk about like a landlord or something like that. Yeah. Or like, the how cruel you are for being mad that your shit got stolen, like that sort of thing. Yep. It's like, well, your taxes should have been 80% anyway. So like, wait, whoa there, barista. So it's like, so there's, the film is doing this thing where it's like the radio DJ is like, well, this was just a guy who had a mental health problem that you triggered. And then the woman who gets stabbed in the neck with the thing is like, she's got the robot voice now. I guess she's like, you are a bitch, or whatever she does. I don't think that happens.
No, that didn't happen.
Think she just sits there and scowls.
Maybe her caretaker, her daughter, or maybe something like that, confronts her in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Although speaking of the radio DJ, as far as good kills,
his kill is great. I had a note about that.
The tongue on the turntable is awesome.
Yeah, I had a note that like, even in the second one, like the kill, which I really fucking hated.
Yeah,
this movie does get, to me, like the kills in horror movies are kind of the parts that get to be the most fun, and when they're fun, like that's just like the best. And the tongue record murder thing was pretty good, and I also liked that it like played out in the town.
Yes,
like the whole town's here,
and then it cuts to what's her name listening to the radio, and she's like, ugh, and turns off the radio.
Yeah. Like, so I like how. As a film technique, like it moves you through the town in a really interesting way. Like you're following the sound of that event. I think that's pretty cool. So not all hate on this film, Do you think that the next version of this film, minus the star power of the lead actress, will matter as much? I don't think so. I think this movie is only I think it was only successful really because they got her back.
I could see her actually coming back.
You think so?
I mean,
She said done.
boy, no band who said we quit forever has ever reunited.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how much money you had wrapped up in crypto.
That's
which I assume she has none wrapped up in crypto.
no. The next Halloween is going to be an NFT.
Oh, good. Maybe it'll be deleted or stolen before it ever airs.
I don't know. I think it all depends. There's always an opportunity for someone to think of an interesting way to approach an already existing property.
For sure.
Whether that happens or not, the likeliness of that happening is low.
Yeah.
But I'm sure Akkad or whatever his name is, I don't foresee it getting turned over to someone who's just going to make it better than it ever was. Or better than it's been since Halloween 3, which is awesome.
Well, I think is that the one with the masks?
Yeah.
That is the only thing that saves this from just being like Friday the 13th. Like that at one point it did go off the rails.
Completely off the
rails. And
it is not far from Gremlins 2.
No. And then and I think that the move to Corey in this film is like in that direction. So when it was doing that and the film was doing, I was like, man, this is like a bold choice for this film to go in this direction, and the Halloween fiend or whatever there, to do it in that particular, I thought was kind of like, it's something, I don't know that it's everything, but it's something.
Yeah. I guess some kid in the town could pick up Corey's scarecrow mask that he wore for a couple of the kills and put it on his face and just keep going.
I think like if they did like a Cloverfield thing and picked up a really interesting script and just had that one element from this film and it became another Halloween.
Yep.
Like if the next version of Halloween was their version of Halloween 3, that would rule.
Say that one.
Okay, so like from this Halloween on, it's sort of like a new franchise, sort of, or it's rebooted. If the next one was like an off the rails Halloween 3-ish, that would be kind of interesting, I think.
Yeah.
From a film perspective.
Yeah.
If this went to A24 and it was just connected by the slightest thread, and I think that would be kind of cool too, because then people could hate on it like a lot, and then the next one that actually had Michael Meyers in it would be like, oh my God,
he's back.
Yeah. Like somebody made like burger patties out of his ground up body, and then the whole town was infected with Michael Myers germs.
Dude, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Like I would respect that ridiculous choice so deeply if the town just was like, fuck it, we're eating them.
Yeah. They're like, it's chili time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pulling little plastic strips of rubber mask out of their teeth.
Yeah. They all drink out of like big gulp cups that look like his mask.
See, there is merch. There's got to be merch in town.
Yeah. I don't even like if somebody gave me a bunch of money to make this movie and go off and do it, I don't even know what I would do. I'd probably try to do like maybe just destroy it, just make a movie that was so terrible that it could not be come back from.
That's impossible.
Yeah.
Well, I do have a speculative question. Mm-hmm. What do you think you could learn from? Okay, so this movie is all about this apprenticeship, right?
Yeah.
That this kid is like learning how to become more effective a killer.
Yeah.
What do you think you could learn from Michael Myers?
Patience.
Yeah. No, it's true. He played a really long game.
Yeah. That's pretty much it.
Slow walking.
Yeah.
No talking.
Yeah. I mean, just walking around and being angry, I kind of got down.
But you just walk around your neighborhood with more effective weapons. Maybe I should cut that out.
Let's cut this out, this part here. But I was like,
I like the Dead Kennedys
and
party
Cramps.
Scene. Well, I like the use of Dead Kennedys and Cramps, but I did like the sort of like them being rapturous dancing on Halloween to this song that would not likely be playing in that bar, but nonetheless, I kind of loved that.
Yeah.
Just that moment of watching the two of them get lost in the moment before reality comes and slams back at them, or at him, but her as well, essentially.
So I thought like the dating stuff, like again, we were talking about the Cloverfield thing. I feel like there were like some really interesting stuff in that. Like I like that like they go to forget their troubles for a minute in like a rapturous way. Like I think that that's like a really interesting character development scene.
Yeah.
And I think at the part where like, he gets harangued by that Karen and he's like, where were you? Like, it's just interesting. Like he was expecting this girl to sort of like save him in this moment because he's so adrift. He's like such a fucking lost person that like this girl that he just met like 20 minutes ago is the answer, like the answer to everything, including his own personal safety. That stuff is like compelling, kind of like in a character drama kind of way, but it just gets so mixed up with just the shit that doesn't make any sense. Like why is Laurie Strode hooking up her granddaughter who has recently, within a year, experienced the most tragic shit ever? And like, instead of just like, let me find you a man, let me pick up this dude that got jumped behind the fucking 7-Eleven. I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, okay, following this thread and picking back up where we were talking about how to reboot this off in a tangential way like the Cloverfield franchise, 90s style rom-com about her, about granddaughter Strode. Like, it's 4 years later, she's ready to start dating again, but it's a comedy.
Oh, and she's on a dating app, and every single one's a serial killer, and she has to like fight her way through her dating app.
I mean, that would be that would be amazing. But no, I'm talking about playing it straight. Just like that character.
Call it something stupid like Slice Right or something, and it's just like
fuck your version's better. That's really
well, it's
good.
just a comedy, It's like easier to have good comedy than serious drama.
Well, totally, but I wasn't thinking horror comedy. I was thinking just rom-com.
I only think horror comedy.
Yeah.
Are there any horror rom-coms? There has to be.
No,
right?
there is.
Yeah.
The zombie one where the zombie's like living in Warm Bodies, I think it's called. He's like a zombie and he's like living in an abandoned airplane.
Oh, and he can kind of think but he can't really like talk until he finds love later. And then he becomes colorful because he goes, that movie is
it's not
capital
good,
T trash.
It's not good, but it was unique.
The most unique zombie thing in probably 20 years.
I don't know about that.
A zombie that wants to find love, as innovative as Fast Zombies, I think.
Yeah, maybe. Or Bub from Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
Listening to music.
Yeah. Whack.
So what have we learned?
We learned never to watch one of these stupid fucking movies again.
I will never learn that lesson.
Yeah.
I keep going back to the poison well over and over and over again.
Yeah, I've been kind of like looking at like establishment classics lately, and like your Rashomons and your Dirty Dozens and stuff like that, and they don't all stand up to the test of time. Like I watched The Dirty Dozen, and the whole front half of the movie is just slow and dumb, and goofy for our modern sensibilities, I think, more than anything else. But like the idea of it and the acting and just there's a lot to like. Like it really, you could see why it would still be taught. I was looking through our back catalog of episodes and like, there's no reason to even think about most of the movies we've covered.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like what is to be learned from looking at shitty things? I don't know. Like it's kind of my garbage in, garbage out thing. Like I've been having a lot of anxiety over watching too much trash, especially because the trash I've been watching is like a lot of YouTube where it's like, in some cases it's just like QVC with abs. Pretty much. Like you're like, oh, another product that, or another clever t-shirt or whatever. Like, thanks, influencer.
No, for sure. I mean, for me, it's about these moments of discovering interesting little things in an aesthetic that I already enjoy. Like, I like horror movies. I don't like them all, but I like the thing of them more than most other modes of cinema. And I like discovering interesting little moments and ideas that are woven through this aesthetic that I'm already sold on.
Yeah. I realized like the genre I'm really interested. I like gangster films, like or crime in general. I think that's probably the type of film I'm the most like interested in.
Oh,
like,
dude, have you seen The Sopranos though?
I have not seen The Sopranos. I haven't seen a single episode of it.
It didn't age well. Don't bother.
Yeah, I mean, it's
The
weird.
Godfather.
Yeah, that movie, Jesus, what lame. That movie, you could watch it, and I don't think it ever. I think people will watch and talk about that movie hundreds of years from now. Like if people are still able to watch a movie in the way that we can go look at an old book or something like that, I think people will study that film. I watched Pulp Fiction for the first time in like 15 years a couple nights ago and was totally blown away by it all over again. And I think that I don't know how many of these horror movies you could watch and be just blown away by after seeing it after not seeing it for a while.
Yeah, fair enough. But then again,
some of them you can.
Some of them you can, but a lot of them that you can are things that like I don't know how much they're worth covering as far as like people engage with the Halloween franchise, so it's kind of fun for you and I to pick it up. Whereas doing an episode about Jennifer Kent's The Nightingale, which is one of the most brutal, horrifying things I've ever seen, period. Nobody who listens to this podcast has seen it. Not literally. Sorry, you two people who have.
I have the book. I haven't seen it.
It's fucking incredible.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. I need to, I've been really starting to dip my toe back into like bigger, more mainstream movies. Like I watched A Star Is Born and was like totally in love with it.
So
it's a great movie.
Yeah. Lady Gaga is, to me, such a more interesting actor than musician.
I mean, I just think she's so watchable, you know, and I think her career, like what we think of as Lady Gaga, is such an art choice, you know, and it's like she could have, it's almost like her Larry the Cable Guy, you know what I mean? And underneath it is just like really thoughtful.
No, that's interesting. I tend to think of her more like a Will Smith or a Justin Timberlake. Like there's an artist entertainer that will just do whatever and seems to be able to rise to whatever occasion it is and has a pretty interesting meta way of thinking about themselves as an entity going through the world.
I would much rather talk about A Star Is Born than any Halloween movie that was ever made.
Well, we've talked about the last 3 of them, so joke's on us. And joke's on you, dear listeners.
Maybe we should cover all 3 of the Star Is Born movies to balance it out.
Sure.
You know, one of the things I really appreciated about it, like you hear all this, by the book, standard Hollywood, blah, 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 blah. I don't know that you would see the ending of Star Is Born coming. Like if you were thinking about it as a Hollywood movie, you know, it has a devastating ending.
Yeah, it is.
That is, you know, and like Jesus Christ, like that last song. I mean, you're like, holy shit. And then the way you see it coming, the whole movie, I think it has it's so weird to be comparing A Star Is Born to Halloween Ends, but but the shocking thing that happens in A Star Is Born near the end, you see it. If you really wanted to go back and look at it, you see it coming the whole time. Like it has like logic, and there, like I think Siskel or Ebert, whichever one of them said that like you really want a movie to unfold. It shouldn't just announce events in a row, which is kind of what Halloween does. It like the things that happen in A Star Is Born. Like there's a flow. Like this happens, therefore this thing logically happens. Therefore this thing logically happens in the world. It's just a better looking movie too.
For sure,
it looks good.
Yeah, for sure.
I thought the opening drag scene. Like I guess we're talking about Star Is Born now. Sorry, horror
You're
fans.
getting the episode now.
But I thought starting it in the drag club was a really interesting and unique choice.
Yeah,
and really set that character, the character Jack, up really well, because he's sort of like is not bothered by the you know what I mean. He's just like there for excellence. He's not, you know, he's a Southern rock dude, so you would imagine he would have like Kid Rock opinions on drag, you know, but he doesn't.
Right.
I wonder what Kid Rock's opinion on drag would be. Actually,
I'm sure it's completely informed by Drag Queen Story Hour. So
now
you know
it is probably
right.
Yeah.
Is that it?
That's it, man. I mean, let's do like...
I would love to do a supercut of every episode of ours and the last sort of thing you sort of say at the end of every episode. Not literally your last words, but when it seems like we're wrapping up.
Oh, we run out and then I have an idea at the end?
No. Yeah. When your final idea is, fuck this movie. Like, we end our episodes with you saying either literally that or you just sort of sighing and physically throwing up your hands and being disgusted by what we've just talked about for the last hour.
I mean, I guess, especially I've been really thinking about mortality a lot because of watching Clerks 3, which I don't know if I've cried as hard at the end of a movie in a long time as that movie. And it is a shitty movie. I mean, it is worse than this movie. It's worse than Halloween Ends as far as like a film craft. Kevin Smith has apparently learned nothing since his first film. Like, there's been no development as a filmmaker. There's simply the expansion of his love for this thing that he's made and these characters that he's made and the world that he's made.
Right.
That is so infectious that it's like, it's basically roofied an entire generation of nerds into following him, which is fine or whatever. But I've been thinking about like, my life wrapping up and like how much time I have spent watching dumb as fuck movies.
So fun.
And it's like, but I also have, like, I know about good movies. Like, I don't know. Like, why am I spending so much time with this shit? Why do you spend so much time with this? I mean, you love it. Yeah.
I fucking love it. Even when I hate it, I love the process of, well, I love to hate it. I love to figure out ways that I hate it.
Yeah, I don't know.
I love dissecting the ways it gets things wrong and right.
But that wrong and right thing is another thing I've been thinking about a lot lately, because it's like these are pieces of art, but they're all, the arts and entertainment. There's an ampersand there for a reason. Mm-hmm. These are separate things. It's not art / entertainment.
Yeah.
Like this is for sure entertainment. The Halloween Ends.
Yeah.
I just, and it, yeah.
Yeah, just because it was lit well doesn't make it particularly emotionally or intellectually resonant.
Yeah, I wish I'd like to spend more time like looking into who shoots different scenes in movies. Like sometimes
like who the cinematographers are?
Yeah.
It makes such a difference.
It makes a huge difference because that's one of the, again, like looking at like the history of Hollywood through Tarantino's book. Some movies look like endured simply because like the cinematographer who was on the case was awesome.
Yeah, because they got what's his name who did the Bergman films,
right?
Brought him to Hollywood,
or the person just had an the first Dirty Harry movie is dumb, but it has like a really interesting way of looking at San Francisco, and I think that has made it endure. Plus the Scorpio actor is so deranged. I think that people really like that.
Hey listeners, should we cover Dirty Harry? It's not really a horror movie, but we could make a case for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Probably not. Well, there's a lot to say about it. Like one thing that's really interesting is like
I mean, just talking about guns, America and guns could be hours alone.
Well, that film has like you get to talk about like John Milius's uncredited dialogue punch up.
Yep.
Which is like, the "Do you feel lucky" punk is complete Milius. Yeah. And I think like if you were to not have that scene in this movie, I don't think anyone would remember this movie.
Possibly.
And there's also one of the murders that happens that he kills like a gay man. Like, and the scope shows the Tarantino made this point. I'll ride in his nuts pretty heavily because of just recently reading that book. But he talks about how it was one of the earliest depictions of just two gay men living their lives without commentary. You just see this like weird little slice of life, but it's ultra disturbing because it's through a rifle scope. So it's like it was this weird film moment. Like I like when films have those strange little moments.
Yeah.
And horror has a lot of them.
Yes.
In general, which I think is one of the things to like about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All in.
Like the spider from Phantasm.
The spider from
the spider creature in Phantasm.
What?
It's it looks like a puppet, It's the worst scene in Phantasm.
I cannot remember this.
What? It's near the end.
I've seen it many times. I've seen them all.
Yeah.
I've seen that one many times.
So this is
okay.
This is why a film like Phantasm is so great compared to a film like any of these Halloween movies, is because
it has so really
much
memorable
weird
moments.
shit. Well, there's so much weird shit that you have trouble remembering all of it, rather than it's so dull you can't remember any of it.
That's very true.
Like, yeah, there's so many dumb things in Phantasm, like when he picks up the cardboard coffin and it's obviously a cardboard coffin, or like the album cover dream sequence when he's like being killed but not killed, or Reggie just as a whole.
Yeah.
You know.
True.
Well, I guess that's it for this shitty franchise. Blumhouse, you should be ashamed of yourselves.
Blumhouse is so delightfully inconsistent.
Oh, man, they are the rarely visited by Guy Fieri restaurant of horror.
Fair.
Yeah.
All right. Email us at whatthe@scarythoughts.org. And thanks for listening.
And let us know if we should cover Star is Born.
Yeah.
It's great.
Or Dirty Harry.
Dirty Harry.
Bye.